This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight, Paulette.
Hey, everybody, I'm Paulette. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Paulette.
Oh, my God. Okay, happy birthday to the birthday people, and welcome to anybody who's new. Oh, my goodness. Sitting here talking to Avery, I'm like, I can't believe I'm in AA. I can't believe I'm in AA. There's just something, when I first came in, I remember watching people take cakes and take chips and stuff. I was like, God, this is dorky, grown people, But that was how I was thinking, when I first got sober. And the truth of the matter is that I was dying, and I wanted what everybody had in this room. I wanted that togetherness. I wanted what, you were talking about, sharing this thing together, and I really identified with what I heard in here, and I really latched on to the concept of it's an inside job, because everything that I had been going through for really since I was born was all about the outside, and it was killing me. I was in excruciating pain when I came in here. Anyway, I love the Marina Center. I took a cake here when I was 2 years sober, and I was thinking about it on my way here. I felt like every place has a little story, and the Marina Center has a story for me, and it reminds me about when I was 2 years sober, about this guy that I was dating. He was at Genesis. Can you hear me? No, you can't hear me. Anyway, this guy came to see me speak. No? Is that better? It's like petering out of me. Okay. Usually I have a pretty loud voice. My voice usually carries. Okay. So I was kind of thinking about my recovery and what has happened and how the Marina Center has as a part of my history. And I was thinking about this guy that I was dating at 2 years of recovery. And I remember he was sitting here in the front row, and I thought I was Cinderella theory, and oh my God, he came to see me speak. And he was at Genesis. He was in recovery. And I found out later, actually, he was engaged, and I thought, oh, this is my dream guy. And 2 weeks later, I found him with coke rings around his nostrils, and he had 2 different shoes on because they had been partying at the Ritz-Carlton with his friend. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm 2 years sober. I can't believe this, And I had done the steps and stuff like that, but I'm trying to give you an example of my story in recovery. It's crazy. It's still crazy. I'm 7 years, 5 months, and 16 days. I got sober on the turn of the century, 1999 to 2000. That was my last drink, my last smoke, and my life is still crazy. I go into meetings and I hear people say things like, I got married, I've got it all together, I did the steps, and it sounds like they live this really perfect life, but that hasn't been my experience. It just has not been my experience. In recovery, I have lied, I have cheated, I have manipulated, I have betrayed people, I still let people down, people still let me down. It happens all the time. But the thing that I love about recovery for me in the 12 steps is that it has shown me how to manage my relationships with people. It has shown me how to make amends where I've harmed people, if I've stepped on people's toes, if I've made a mistake, if I've betrayed people. So for me, that is what I was lacking before I came into the program. I didn't have any of that. And, my whole story is kind of, it's crazy, my story. My dad's a junkie. He's still using. He's still in and out of jail. I don't believe that that's why I'm an alcoholic. It's not his fault that I'm an alcoholic. I do believe that there's a genetic thread that somehow came through that, may have something to do with my alcoholism. And then I was raised by a single parent, and we were very, very poor. I grew up on welfare. And I grew up in a very affluent neighborhood. I did not feel like I belonged. I was Mexican. I was sad. I was depressed. That's some of the stuff that I remember as a kid. So by the time I was about 8 years old, I was dying to drink. It was like, yeah, I needed some relief. And the idea of there was something about if I drank, I was kind of grown up, or if I smoked cigarettes, it was kind of something. There's just something about it. And my aunt had this bar. And we had planned to get drunk that night, and I started on vodka when I was 8, and I blacked out that night. I partied with my cousin, who she had already been beating me up. I'd already been in the hospital. She would play with me really, really rough. And she ended up becoming a junkie like a couple years late, like, I don't know. She was about 13, she became a junkie. But she put me in the hospital a couple times. And so I started drinking on vodka, and I blacked out that night. And then when I was 12 years old, I started drinking. I was full out by the time I was 12 years old. I mean, I was smoking weed, and I was drinking. And she put me in the hospital. I ended up in a fight. I was a runaway. By the time I was 12, I was running away. And I went to live with my aunt, and my aunt's daughter is his cousin who put me in the hospital again. She would try to rip my eyeball out. She was smoking angel dust. She was doing something. I don't know what she was doing, but she was definitely, you know, just tripping hard that night. And I ended up in the hospital. So, like, by the time I was 13 and 14, I was a runaway, and I drank a lot, and my mom had tried to figure out how to. My poor mom. I mean, she didn't know what to do. She was a single parent. She was a student, and she put. I became a ward of the court because I got caught stealing because I was living out on the streets. I was living in my friends' garages, and she actually needed me to be. I went into juvenile hall because I got caught stealing, but she needed the state to come in and intervene because she didn't know what to do. So I ended up in some foster homes, and I'd run away from the foster home. And then by the time I was 14 years old, my first boyfriend, well, he wasn't my first boyfriend, but he was one of the more significant boyfriends. He died drinking on a motorcycle. He was a little bit older than me. And my life was just unraveling. I was only 14 years old, I was like in 9th grade. My life is already unraveled. It's been a mess, So this kept going on. This was going on all the way up until I got to my 30s. And if you start off that young, I mean, it's just going to keep getting worse. And I remember through all of that stuff that was going on, there was a side of me that, and I was thinking about this morning because I had a dream last night. I feel like I was living this dual, like these two worlds, because there would be the side of me that was trying to maintain, I'm a good girl, I'm going to school, I'm like trying to get my education, and I grew up in the performing arts. That was the one thing that somehow kept me alive in some ways, and I had that outlet. I had this creative outlet. I grew up a dancer, and it was a great outlet for me because I could express myself physically, but I didn't have to talk. So I was still kind of like hiding out, but I had a way to express myself. And that, I got a lot of scholarships and stuff like that. And I felt like there was that lifestyle, but then there was this underbelly, this like, I call it the bowels of society. And so when I was 15, the best thing for me at 15 is I'm going to hook up with the local drug dealer that I met at the head shop. He had some hash, I was buying a prototype, and I just thought it was so cool with my prototype because it had all the gadgets, the pin and the chamber and stuff like this. And if I lost the pin, I had to buy another prototype. You could actually order the pin on separately, but I would just buy the whole thing. And I was so into my bongs and that whole my Marlboro Reds and so so I'm 15, he's 35, okay? And my mom, so I've already been on the go and this and that, so my mom really, she actually was okay with that because she knew at least where I was because of the foster homes and the juvenile hall and stuff like that, it wasn't working. I was just crazy is what I was. And so, I mean, I did not label this until I was in recovery, but for me, when I look back, I'm thinking, that's prostitution. I'm 15, this guy's 35. I used to weigh out his coke, his bindles. I used to fold his bindles. I used to weigh the coke. I used to weigh the weed. I was proud of myself because I could like weigh the coke, I'd quarter, half, without really, I could just scoop it and I knew what it was, And that's how I actually paid for my drugs. Like, I would get shoe boxes of this kind, killer weed, and I always had alcohol, and I always had whatever. I mean, I would go to the racetrack. The whole thing was just crazy, And meanwhile, I grew up in Northern California, which is the equivalent of Bel Air, Brentwood, Beverly Hills. So the whole thing was crazy. So I was always trying to maintain, like, this outside thing. And my friends, they all went to Europe, and they went to Hawaii for Christmas, and they went to Europe when they graduated, and they all had sports cars when they were 16, or they had like the hottest SUV or whatever was going on. And so what I did in order to keep up with that is this, my 35-year-old boyfriend would buy me my new Fiat. I had a convertible when I was 16, and I thought it was so cool. But I know from the outside, people were probably thinking, oh my God, this poor kid, I mean, my family, everyone in my family, by the time I got sober, just thought it was ridiculous. I mean, they really couldn't take, they were just like, this girl's out of control. But the beautiful thing is that my family today comes to me, they all want what I have. They want to know, like, what I'm doing, how I do it, what I'm up to. Everything has completely turned around for me. But the thing that's always been the hardest thing for me, and even when I was doing my steps, was, and I still battle with this at 7.5 years of recovery, is leaning on somebody else, like, a man or something like that. For me, it's like, it's great to have the support, and I think that it's important for people to be able to lean on people and stuff like that. But what happens for me is that I feel like I don't know, there's like some lack of something. Like, I turn to people still to validate me, and that's kind of like still my battle. I think I still suffer this low-grade depression from not being fully empowered on my own yet. But I love the principles, and I love where it says it's progress, not perfection. I do believe that, I'm so much closer to where I really want to be than I've ever been before. And I can see that there's a way, to get to where I want to be, like something self-fulfilling for myself. And I think that that's, like, for me, really the most important thing right now for me. But so I I have been completely liberated from the shame that I felt, or the guilt, or a lot of that stuff has been lifted. But there is still sometimes, like, a little bit of sadness, like, wow, at a very early age, I basically was prostituting myself, and there is a consequence that there's something that happens to your soul, and there is a little bit of suffering for that, and I can get caught up in that, even in sobriety, leaning towards the guy with the car, or or the cash, or this and that, and that's just kind of like my story. I'm not like saying there's anything wrong with that even. I mean, it's just something that sometimes feels bad. Like, I really want to be self-supporting, and I still have to lean on people, like, okay, I just came out of a 4-year engagement. He completely took care of me financially, and I was so disempowered by that relationship. It's the only relationship that I've ever been in that I thought was healthy. He got on his knees, he proposed to me, I met him in an AA meeting. I was a CSR of this meeting for 2 years. It was my last announcement, and I used to ask people to come and answer phones at central office, that graveyard shift from midnight to 8. And he came up and he volunteered to come and to answer phones. And literally, like, within 6 weeks, he proposed to me. We lived together for 4 years. But there's still something that I never felt completely whole, because I felt like I resorted back, and I fell back on him financially. And it's just something that I battle with. It's something I've had to learn to live with. I'm not going to drink over it, but it's something that I'm still working on, that I really want to. I just want to, I'm so committed right now to be in my fullest potential. Like, I know I'm so capable. I can roll up my sleeves today. I can show up anywhere. I can follow through on anything that I want. If I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be there. That wasn't the case before I got sober. I mean, I had so many dreams, and whether they were pipe dreams or not, I would get a little boom. I would get like a little bone or whatever. I got a 3-picture deal when I was 18 years old. I got my little windows, my little breaks, but the thing is that I would get these little breaks, and it's like I couldn't follow through. I just couldn't follow through. Wherever it was coming from, most of the time it was high, but it really came down to, I think, that I had not really had the opportunity yet to really respect myself. I mean, I came in here totally so, like, no respect for myself, and I had no really it's nobody else's fault. It was just kind of like just the way that things unfolded. I'm sure my mom wasn't thinking, I don't want her to grow up with no self-respect, but that is kind of like how it unfolded. And I was able to kind of take a look at all of that stuff when I did the steps. So what happened for me, really what happened for me, what drove me into these rooms is, this is some crazy stuff, but it was still kind of like, you know, I was hanging out with the guy, he had the coke, he had the alcohol, and all that mattered to me was that I had my goodie bag. You know, if I had the best alcohol and all the party favors and stuff like that, then that was my source of power. Like, they talk about lack of power in the big book, and I know that they're talking about sort of lack of power in the area of powerlessness. We have lack of power. But I kind of look at it, I kind of explore the stuff that I read in the book, and I look at that power thing as like, I had lack of power. Like, I turned to the coke, that's my power. I turned to the alcohol, that's my power. I turned to a guy, I turned to cash. I look at all these things on the outside, and that's my power. And so, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. But anyway, what happened right before I came in was I was exhausted. I was so pathetic. I was tired. I couldn't maintain a relationship. I mean, I actually fell in love with somebody, and I couldn't hold that relationship together. And I remember it would be like, I blamed him for everything. I demanded everything. I was a spoiled brat. I was a brat. And I wanted this person so freaking bad. And I actually was talking to him right before I got here, because his dog just passed away. But, you know, he's still my friend. And I remember we'd get in a fight, and he'd be dragging me down the street. I'd be holding his leg like, please don't leave me. Like, that's how I would break up with people. It was so dramatic, and it was crazy. But something started clicking. Like, there's a relationship between this drinking and using, and then the fact that I can't have the relationship. And so something started clicking. Something started turning on for me. And as soon as he left, I hooked up with this whole party group that I could have everything that I wanted. You know, this group, me and these girls, and we would party all night drinking and limos, and, you know, it was just, I left with all the party favors. I left with money, you know, and it was this whole thing. And I was like, this isn't working. I was so miserable, you know. I was so unhappy. And I just dropped everything. I dropped the weed, I dropped the alcohol, and I sat there and I was like, I don't know really what I'm going to do, but I'm going to start counting days. And I had no program. And I remember 9 days into when I had set everything down, I saw a photo on the news of this guy that I had been partying with. Like, he went to jail. He's gone for life. This guy that I was partying with, he had like 9 felony counts, rape, blah, blah, blah. And this was like my running partner, companion guy. And I'm thinking, my God, my life at 30 years old, this is not what I actually became everything that I despised and that I didn't want, you know. I think I lived with a lot of lies with myself for a very long time, because I think I was already doing things that I never thought I would do by the time I was like 17 or 18. But, you know, drinking and using and that lifestyle, I think for me, was like it was survival. Everything was built around drinking and using and just barely surviving. So I kind of buckled down on my knees and I came in. I was like, okay. I ran into somebody. I had a project, one of my other projects I was trying to get off the ground, and this guy was in AA, and he just started pointing me in the right direction. And luckily that I went to my first meeting and I bawled. I think I bawled for 2 or 3 years. I just couldn't believe. I was crying probably for all the suffering or from being so scared and just being like this open child. I was like, it was too much. It was way too much. But I definitely didn't think that I deserved like what people were giving me, but there was women and there was people, just everybody, just like numbers and phone numbers, and I thought it was ridiculous. I thought, I can't call these people. There's no way I'm calling these people. But there was enough people that were patient, and then there was people that had what I wanted, and I would listen to them, and I started listening to what they were doing, and I saw what they were doing, and, you know, there was, I mean, I would be blown away. I would see somebody with 40 years of recovery, totally successful, ridiculous, man, like sweeping the floor, and I'm going, my God, you're actually, and he's like, it still works. This still works, and he's like sweeping the floor. And you know, when I came in, that's all I wanted. I was like, if that's working, I'm sweeping the floor. I'm in. That is it. And So I think I always had about 5 commitments a week for about the first 5 years. And I latched onto a couple really incredible women that work an amazing, amazing program. At first, I really focused on the outside stuff because that's just kind of where I was coming from. And slowly, as all that stuff unraveled, I started gravitating to rooms where there was like just 50 years of recovery. I mean, these people just had it going on, and they were spreading the message, and they were so passionate about it. So my recovery, a lot of my recovery I did in the Palisades, Malibu, where there's just like really, really old-time recovery. I was a little bit intimidated by the rodeos and those places because it was just like amazing, hot people. I'm like, oh my God, it's too much. I just want to focus on recovery, and just save my ass is basically what I was doing. And I sponsored a lot of women. I actually have sponsored a lot of people that are older than me. And I've even sponsored women that have more time than me. So, that's really interesting. Women that had never done the steps, but they wanted, the program that I was working, and I had done the steps like 2 or 3 times, and they wanted what I had, And over the last year, I'm not necessarily working the program, the tightest program, but I'm definitely working a program that works. I wear my recovery really loose today. My life is like so much more laid back. It's not as structured, and I allow a lot of room for mistakes in my own life and in the lives of other people. I completely, when it comes to a relationship with a higher power, my whole relationship with God was found in the rooms. And I cultivated that relationship through the advice of sponsors and in time by doing the things that they told me to do, whether it was read 86, 87, 88, I was introduced to the 11th step right away. I needed the 11th step because for me, I felt like there was no way that I was going to get through the steps and have to sort of take a look at myself and build this relationship with myself unless I had a higher power. I really needed that. And I hit my knees every morning, and I did the 3rd step prayer. And I still do those things, and I'm just like, I know the steps inside out for me and my experience. I'm not like a really big book thumper or anything like that, but I do know the steps. I can recite the steps. When I did the steps, I always in the morning with my morning prayer, I would do the step that I was on as sort of a prayer. So if I was on the 1st step, I would do the 1st step. I would do the 3rd step prayer. I love the St. Francis prayer. I use the 12 and 12 a lot, so that St. Francis prayer on 99 and the 12 and 12, I did that every morning. And then I would say, while I was like really involved in the steps, I would do that. I don't do that so much anymore, but I would say the 1st step. Then when I was on the 2nd step, I would recite the 1st step and the 2nd step. Then when I was on the 3rd step, I would do all those 3 steps. And I did that all the way up till I got up to 12. So I think I finished the first round of steps like right before I took a year cake. And so all those 12 steps were being in my prayer, like in the morning. So they were really ingrained, and I could process what they meant to me and what my own personal experience, how I bridged my own personal experience to the steps. And I think that really laid a pretty amazing foundation for me. And that's how I started getting the inside stuff that I wanted. That's how I went back to school. I got my undergraduate degree. I've taken all kinds of courses on leadership and communication and managing, just life. I mean, I just had to basically learn how to do everything because I didn't really know how to do anything, and I'm still trying to figure that out. And I still get stubborn because I don't really want to have to ask for help and kind of want to figure it out first on my own and make the mistakes. But I've done all of that stuff to kind of rebuild myself. And the way that I look at least when I look back on my experience, if I can sort of like analyze it or kind of break it down, for me it's pretty basic. It's about just being somewhat sane, like restoring myself back to sanity and managing my thinking and managing also other people's influences that they have on me, because there's a lot of weird things that people do that hurt me, or they're critical, or they're judging and stuff like that. And I have to process that and manage that and maintain my own, well-being, So that's kind of like, it's become very basic. It's not, that's just sort of what's happened to me. And I'm able to pass that on. I have some friends that their thinking is so toxic, and it's like they're just, at 9 months of recovery, and I'm like, God, and I wish I could just give it to them, but I have to be patient. Like, they have to have their own experience. It has to just sort of happen in the way that when they need it, or how they, it's just crazy, it's like, and just being patient and watching. My heart goes out to those people. I have a couple minutes. I'm going to say, like, I had like the craziest day today. I just want to share this a little bit. A really good friend of mine who has had a huge impact on me in recovery, he found his brother dead, right? And I found out about this last night because his brother OD'd. And this guy has 7 years of recovery, and it's such a weird thing to try to like wrap your thinking around. He has 7 years of recovery, but his brother is dead, it's like, and I love this guy, he's still alive and he's 7 years sober. So I just went up to this meeting where I know he's at, and I just wanted to go and give him a hug and let him know how much I love him and how much his recovery has impacted me. And I feel like I'm getting really emotional about it. So I was a mess today, and there was this asshole guy at this meeting who commented on my share, like how he could barely get through my share, how annoyed he was with my share. And I'm thinking, I'm just not in the mood today. I'm not in the mood. I got up, I left, I went to the car, and I cried because I was just really there just to go and just let this person know how my heart was broken. I could tell, like, and I knew his brother too, and but I didn't realize that his brother was in that much pain or whatever it was that drove him to kill himself, because he took some pills, and then my sober friend finds him. It's like, it's really intense. But what's so crazy about my life is that right before that, I'm on the phone. I'm about to have a meeting tomorrow or Friday. I got this commitment from somebody, and it's like basically everything that I went to school for, everything that I've dreamt of, like kind of is pending on this meeting that's going to happen tomorrow and the next day. And I'm horrified. Like, I am so scared of what I'm going into, what I'm pitching, what I'm asking for, because it's just kind of like that side of me that's like, who am I kidding? I feel like I'm 7 years old, but that's in God's hands, and I'm going to go and put myself out there and ask for what I want, and ask God to guide me to deliver what it is that I say that I can deliver. Once I go in there and sell these projects, and I've been working on them for like 5 or 6 years. So, we'll see what happens with that. And one last thing. I actually took a sip of vodka Red Bull recently. I think did I tell you that story? I had a vodka Red Bull sip accidentally, and I also had a bite of some cake. This pastry was so beautiful, but it was mixed with this chocolate whiskey, and it wasn't cooked out. They just actually cooked it in there. And I got a little bit nervous because I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm wearing this a little too loosely. I'm like kind of out here. I'm partying. I was in Mexico and on this like 5-star retreat, and there was a chef, and everybody was partying. And I thought, this is fun. I'm thinking, this is fun. I'm living my life. I'm going to go out there. I'm going to have a good time. I'm not going to, not go on this retreat and then be all, hardcore about that I'm sober and you guys stay away from me. But that night, I did freak out. I got that bite, and I was like, whoa. I mean, I ran out of there. I was like, I got to go. And I actually was in Mexico, and I texted some people, tried to call my sponsor, couldn't find her, text some people. Somebody, luckily, there was a lifeline back here in California, and I just got back. I went back to, like, God and connecting and realizing that, that I'm fragile, that my sobriety is fragile, and that happened. And then literally like a week after I got back, I was hanging out at this, it was just this thing, this event, and second time, like, boom, another sip, it was like, all right, something's happening. Anyway, so that's when I hung out with my sponsor that day, and you asked me to speak. So thank you so much for asking me to speak, and thanks for hearing me out. Thanks.